Lepo pozdravljam nocojšnje goste, člane Colorado Piano Tria in klarinetista Tadeja Koeniga. Dobrodošli na Bienale Koper. Zelo smo vam hvaležni, da ste sprejeli povabilo in izziv take vrste koncerta, ter da ste sploh omogočili izvedbo kvarteta za konec časa Olivierja Messiaena. No, preden bi vam postavili nekaj vprašanj v zvezi s samim kvartetom oziroma s samo skladbo, vas vabim, da se predstavite našim poslušalcem.
Pozdravljeni, jaz sem Tadej Koenig, sem prvi klarinetist orkestra SNG Opera in Balet Ljubljana, učim kot docent na Akademiji za glasbo v Ljubljani ter na Univerzi v Novem Sadu kot gostujoči profesor. Zelo sem vesel in počaščen, da lahko sodelujem v taki zasedbi na koncertu takšnega tipa, kot bo v teh dnevih za Bienale Koper. Je neka posebna izkušnja, tako da nestrpno pričakujem streaming koncert.
Sem Gal Faganel, violončelist in pedagog. Zadnjih 23 let in pol delujem v Združenih državah Amerike, od lani pa poučujem tudi na Akademiji za glasbo v Ljubljani.
My name is Adam Rutiewicz. I'm a pianist originally from Poland, and I've been a professor of piano at the University of Northern Colorado since 2015. It's a great pleasure to play for you, even virtually, and thanks for having us.
My name's Jubal Fulks. I'm a violinist and professor at the University of Northern Colorado in America, colleague of Gal and Adam, and we play together in the Colorado Piano Trio for some years now, and we appreciate very much the opportunity to put this piece together remotely.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to be part of Biennale, and Michele, you can introduce the piece.
Yeah, it's quite interesting this year to have you here. So we are far away from each other, but we will be connected by this fantastic music by Olivier Messiaen. It's actually not the ideal piece to record in a streaming solution, but how did you manage to do it? I'm very much interested in this. Could you tell us something, Gal, about your work, the way you practice the piece and you put it together? How did it work?
So there's a little bit of history with this group, and it's coming from two parts. Mm-hmm. With Tadej and two other colleagues in Ljubljana, we performed the piece together last summer, a year and a half ago, in Ljubljana, and then last year as well with the Colorado Piano Trio, with clarinetist Lauren Jacobson. We performed this same piece in Colorado. So we have done this piece before on stage. Now this was a very different experience because there is nobody in the room, nobody else in the room. So it's a bit lonely, yet once we begin making music, all of a sudden we feel all the other parts. We know the other parts we're playing with and against. And so there is a connection, but it's while it's virtual and I had to edit all these parts together to fit. When I'm recording it, I feel a connection that's not virtual, that's actually very, very strongly felt with all the other voices or all the other artists.
Yeah, from this point of view, I guess the piece is the right one because it brings this inner symbolic meaning. Like it has been composed in a very special moment by Olivier Messiaen. No? Do you feel this situation of the lockdown and can be somehow connected to the tragedy that Messiaen has lived at that time? I mean, of course, not in a dramatic way, but I think the piece somehow is a symbol of music that can be done anyway, although in a terrible situation.
I absolutely agree. I think it does speak to the general sense of being sort of trapped in a place and not being able to go out and experience humanity. And it sort of conveys that that thing which we previously, I think, did not all experience. We could only imagine what that might be like. But now I think all of us have a better idea of the genesis of the music.
Yeah, that's good. Could you tell us, Gal, a little bit about the piece? I know you have studied it for a long time, and it can be very interesting for most of the public. I mean, it's a so well-known piece, but it's never enough. I think it's good if you can say a couple of words about the piece itself.
So the piece came about in the concentration camp Görlitz, and the instrumentation was chosen based on available instruments and players. So the circumstances of the creation of the piece were one of, it came out of suffering, finding, managing a situation, and well, a terrible situation, and I see the music that remains from that, and we have some pictures and writings about it, as a huge monument to what happened during that time in history. I thought maybe we organized a little bit so that each of us can speak a little bit about each movement that we're playing. So maybe I think Adam was going to go with one, so number one, so that we, as audience listens, there's a little bit of context for each idea.
Yes, please. Thanks. Thank you so much.
Sure. So the thing is that this piece is very, to me, it's very abstract music that's trying to abstract music that's trying to express something also very abstract. That's, in some ways, it's really about the religious spiritual experience that comes from a deep seclusion and a deep, I would say, resistance to the circumstances of the current existence of the composer and probably his fellow inmates in the prison camp. And it's really, in some ways, it's a question mark on what's going to be or what it is. And so he really transcends over everything that happens around him in this music. And to me, that's how I feel this is about. So it's in some ways, it's very imaginative and very creative, but it also refers deeply to his Christian faith. And so the first movement, which is entitled The Liturgy of the Crystal, in the preface of the score, he writes and describes the movement, giving us some idea of what it is about. And he writes, between 3 and 4 in the morning, the awakening of birds, a solo blackbird or nightingale improvises, surrounded by a shimmer of sound, by a halo of trills, lost very high in the trees. Transpose this onto a religious plane, and you have the harmonious silence of heaven. It's very interesting. It's almost like a poetry in some ways. He writes a halo of trills and then talks about the religious experience right there. So it's from the musical perspective, I think it's a very different experience from playing versus listening, because as you play this, you have to be so concentrated on the rhythmic aspect of organization of the music, because anything that kind of goes wrong, even by a 16 note, it shifts the entire movement to a different plane. So one has to be extremely careful with that. So I think for me, playing this particular movement is the priority is definitely the focus on the accuracy and providing a consistency of the pulse that allows other instruments to shine through that. I think all of my colleagues will have different thoughts and perspectives on that, but that's just something that I think, from my perspective, I can share with you.
Good. So today, I think you had a little bit more freedom in interpreting your own part in the solo and the so
Yeah.
famous solo for solo clarinet. Can you tell us your experience?
It's funny that every time I play this piece, I have the feeling of how much energy and how much you have to give yourself into the piece, because it's so demanding, playing all these long notes, to play the abyss of the bird, the opposite that we hear in the second part of the piece. The first part is very melancholic, very slow, extremely slow, so slow that you really have the impression that you've been trapped in the time, because as I feel and as I read, the Messiaen was comparing the abyss's time. So here we are trapped in this inevitability of escape. So every time you want to escape, he gives some long notes, playing from really pianissimo to the high dynamics, and then changes the to a bird song that tries to escape and shows the freedom that also can live in this abyss. And for me, it is demanding and also extremely beautiful and interesting how he comes to the back to this poetic, melancholic A part that he transposes then even lower in the one octave, that you can play even softer and even more concentrated and without any stops, because it goes to the internal. The piece is it depends. If you play this as a solo piece in a concert, it's a piece that you can give more of your own artistic expectations when you perform it. But when you play it in a quartet, it has to become one part of a greater thing. It has to become one of the prayers. And I think the most important prayer in this thing is the bird that wants to escape. Let me escape from this time that stops us from doing what we do every day. What correlates to what we are doing now. We are in lockdown. We cannot do anything. We are in this abyss, and we are trying to escape. And really, I thank you for this escape you gave me.
Yeah, Jubal, did you have the same feeling when you recorded your solo part? I think it's one of the most demanding, together also with the solo part for cello, because of the same things we were talking about with Tadej. Actually, although we are talking about the airflow, I think it's the same feeling on the bow. No, it's with these very long notes, and to keep the tension. Can you tell us your feelings when you recorded it?
Yeah, playing slowly is absolutely one of the hardest, if not the hardest, things to do on a string instrument. These incredibly long, slow phrases that crescendo over a matter of minutes are very hard to sustain through bow changes, trying to mask the bow changes and create the sense of, as Messiaen wanted, upward transcendence of the music to heaven, basically, is where it's going. Playing alone, and the way I did this was the way we had decided beforehand that this would be best is to record the violin part and then to have Adam play the piano part, which is much it's more regular in the sense that the rhythm is very steady from the piano. and the violin, the rhythm changes. There are eighth notes, quarter notes, ties, and all that. So I had to play with a metronome in my ear in a room by myself with no steadiness, except for what was in the ear. And just personally, as a musician, that's not something I've ever done much of, playing with headphones on. I've done a little studio recording, but this is different because you only have one ear with which to listen. And so I learned how much I use my other ear to to listen.
To control your instrument. And
Yeah,
your
actually,
body.
I learned that I listen to tone with my left ear and pitch mostly with my right ear. And so it's a very, very different experience recording in this setting and playing and trying to play with emotion in this setting. I would say it's completely different from the experience of playing it live.
And Gal, sorry, did you do the same? Did you record first your solo part with the cello, and then you added the clavier and then, sorry, the piano after that? Was it the same?
We did a couple different things actually. At the end, I think the takes that I put together are actually two that we independently recorded with the click. But that wouldn't have been possible if I wasn't able to be deeply aware of the harmony changes. Even though all I was hearing was this, there was a really deeply felt harmony that I had inside while I was sustaining those notes and building those really long phrases. So it's, if we just say, well, we record it with a metronome, it sounds really cheap and empty. And I don't think it comes through that way in the end. Neither was it felt that it was just a task to get through because of what's in the score, because of the feeling from having done it previously. And in a sense, as I'm recording my sustained note, I am inside of me beating, playing the chords that Adam is playing. Now, he recorded it on a different day probably, and in a different room. I'll mention one other thing. We each recorded in a very different space. And so one thing that's challenging with sustained long notes, well, actually with most sounds coming out, that the sound doesn't develop the same way in a small room. So being practicing and rehearsing for performing in large space and treating our instrument to make use of the space and the way the sound develops, and having to, when recording like this, forget all this and just do it for here, so that it will be good on the recording, was challenging. A constant reminder: I am not in a big space. I don't have to force or play for the last row of a big auditorium.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting experience, I think, also for you. But it will be for us as well, because I'm really looking forward now to listening to the result of this, because from a symbolic point of view, it really means a lot. Also, the fact that you were isolated, so to say, in your own room, in your own country, and not only physically but also politically somehow. So it's very interesting, I think, what you did now. So I really thank you so much. Did you use cameras, or is just a recording of your own parts?
We use cameras as well.
We
recorded separate audio and video tracks, and good. So yeah, for I think maximum editing capabilities, and also it takes away, I don't want to speak too much for Gal, but I think it takes away some of it gives him more options, I think, at the end. But to bring it back to John Cage, the experience of trying to, I have 4 children, and so the experience of trying to achieve silence in a room in the house, it made me realize how many sounds there are that we're not aware of, especially in our own setting.
Yeah.
I had to re-record the first movement because apparently on the first recording there was the sound, I think somebody was taking a shower downstairs, and then the heat came on, and you know, things like this I had to take the wind chimes down outside because it was windy. So it's amazing how the experience has made me more aware of the sounds in my home surrounding.
Sorry, just one more thought.
Yeah, please.
You know, the situation that we have today can't be compared with the circumstances of the creation of the piece. However, one thing that I think we are struggling with is the lack of connection that we've had. And that's new for all of us, even the loners, or, you know, I'm not particularly daily in need. I don't daily feel the need to connect actively, yet I think the lack of connection since March is affecting us a lot. We don't even realize probably in some of the ways it's affecting us, and kids especially. I also have 2 children, and you know, they're in school, they're not in school, they're not with their friends. So I appreciate the collaboration, the virtual collaboration. It's very deeply felt, even though it's in this strange, sterile environment of you know, a room, recording devices, and then in the end editing. And I think of the 4 of us, I'm the only person that gets to actually experience the chamber music as I line up tracks and make sure that the you know, even levels and kind of make the sounds match as well as possible, since the quality and the timbre and the space is so different with each one. And so I'm having a great time making chamber music with the 4 of us.
You get to know your friends even more, I think. Even deeper, no?
Playing a little bit of a chess with our sound, and hopefully the end result will be enjoyable.